but it seems like a number of our guests probably would not be able to understand if I spoke in Urdu. So how does it fare out? English? Okay, well, last night when I started to read the report, given my background, I started to jot down notes, and I have lots and lots of them about the limitations of ranking and percentile methodology, about the report being based upon the availability of data and not the required data, but the available data, about the equal weighting of variables and what is the empirical basis for weighting each of these variables equally. It kind of needs some more justification, about how high Cronbach alpha for internal consistency, but very limited commentary on the external validity of these variables and whether they are in fact tapping into what we call vulnerability. So I did all of that, and there are many, many, many more notes that I have. That's my poor training. But instead, I decided I'd tell you a few real stories. Behind all of these statistics, what are the real stories? So let me show you a picture of a young boy in the district of Washuk, Balochistan, whose mud house was built after 7 years of effort. And one torrential flood washed it away. And in a makeshift environment, he was standing there with nothing but fear and uncertainty in his eyes, asking, what just happened to me? Let me also tell you the story of a mother who had to bury her child because of malnutrition. Very painful death. It is not a sudden death that comes from some kind of infection, 3 days of hospital, and then you die. Imagine a kid dying bit by bit because of malnutrition. I can also tell you stories and give you pictures of kids who die because of bad drinking water. I can tell you a real story of a farmer whom I met during the recent floods. I was given the instructions by the Prime Minister to chase the flood, and I was chasing it around, and I saw this one farmer just sitting by the flood line, crying. And I sat by him and I asked him what happened. And he showed me, right in the middle, in the belly of the water, he showed me his 2 acres of land. And he said, I owe, at 70,000 rupees an acre, I owe 150,000 rupees. And my entire crop has been washed away. And I don't know what to do. When the water settles, I wouldn't have the money for seed, nor would I have money for fertilizers. So I don't know where I would go. So mother bearing the child doesn't know where she would go. The farmer standing by the washed away crop doesn't know where he would go. A father helplessly looking at his young child whose mud house got washed away, doesn't know what to tell his child. Now that's behind all of these Cronbach alphas and all of these vulnerability reports. That's what makes life and vulnerability real. I compare this with this hotel. I walk around in F6 and diplomatic enclave where I get invited every now and then. And I go to Gulberg in Lahore, and I go to Clifton and Defense in Karachi, and similar localities everywhere. I go around and I hear about the great leaders that we had, Dr. Mahbubul Haq and A.G.N. Qazi, who made these brilliant developmental plans, who someone stole, they tell me, some country, Korea or someone else, and they are where they are right now. And I see the results of that too. I see a magnificent infrastructure, broken at some places, bipolar perhaps, but the country is all right. I see technologies, I see the demonstration of the new technologies that we recently did in the way of space technologies. I look at the Nobel laureates that we have, Dr. Abdus Salam and a bunch of others. I see all of this, and then I wonder, and people like myself, the question is primarily to me, Did it not imagine or cross our imagination that a kid should be able to go to school? A mother in the birthing process should not die. A father should not look into the empty eyes of his child without answers to questions of what hit me last night, and what happened to my sister, and where is my house, and where is my school, and what do I do about it now? So I find lopsidedness. Sometimes I feel it's the lack of imagination. For a country that has achieved what we have achieved in the way of nuclear technology, missile technology, space technology, Nobel laureates, it didn't cross our mind that a kid should be able to go open up a tap and drink a glass of water. Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? What does it take to store water, to put a pipe, and make sure people have safe drinking water? Even you, us sitting here, look at the bottles. This just tells you, here in the heart, the most expensive real estate of Pakistan, no one would dare to go and drink a glass of water from the tap. So why did it not cross our imagination? So I wonder if this is the lack of will. I wonder if this is the lack of imagination. Or I wonder if this is an issue of justice and rights, which are very poorly articulated. I read the report and I found out that there are, even the best districts. You just read about the best districts, forget about the most vulnerable ones. Just read the report and see what is available in the best districts. And that will tell you the story. Now that's not a good story. Not the bad districts, the good districts. Even that is not a good story. But the worst part is the lopsidedness in the report. Can you imagine that 17 out of 20 worst districts in Pakistan are in Balochistan? 17? Don't we see some kind of lopsidedness here? And the additional 2 are in what was erstwhile FATA. There you go. That tells you where the vulnerabilities are. That tells you a bit of the real story. 10 million people. 10 million people live in these 20 districts. 10 million people is more than the population of most countries of the world. 10 million people is a small to mid-sized country. And these people, 10 million people, are living in this most devastated, most vulnerable districts with 2 million mothers of childbearing age who do not know in the process of giving birth whether they're going to live or die. You read the infant mortality rates. With 2 million kids who are under the age of 5 who do not know if they're going to have access to school or access to hope or livelihood. So it was a very eye-opening report. Thank you very much. I read the description of these. I tried to, I think more pictorially, so I started to kind of imagine all of those pictures that I just shared with you. And I realized that 65% of the population in these 20 districts was living in makeshift arrangements. No homes. No homes. 65% of the population, 10 million people, is 6.5 million people who are living in makeshift arrangements. About 50%, 5 million people do not have any access to safe drinking water, or drinking water for that matter. In Jhalmaksi, one of the districts, 97%, 97, not 9.7, 97% of the people are living in mud houses. So, sad. Sad is what comes to my mind. In Balochistan overall, if you want to look get the overall picture, about 2/3 of the kids are not enrolled, about 68%, some odd number like that. I mean, I may be a little bit off on numbers, but not a whole lot. And there are only 2.7%, less than 3% schools that have water, electricity, walls, latrine. So, and Balochistan is Balochistan. If you look at overall Pakistan, about a fourth of children, 1/4 of the children are not going to school, not enrolled. So these things, to me, are not making sense. And therefore, it's not a surprise that on Human Development Index, we have 164, about 189 countries, 189 or 190 countries now, 164. And I, this morning when I got up and I said, what would be a bad number? And when I looked at the SDG report, I found out that out of 167 countries reporting, we have 140 some. And when you look at this report and you look at those indices, you start to get the picture. So I started to ask myself last night, what is behind all of this? And I found, obviously overnight, she gave me almost like a pop quiz exam. So, I don't think I'd be able to give you profound answers, but I think one of the major problems that we have is the fiscal structure and governance. We reward population, not poverty. When you reward population and not poverty, not disenfranchisement, then what are you going to get? You're going to get population. There you go. What you reward, you get. In your allocations, if you reward population, you're going to get population. If you rewarded prosperity, you would get prosperity. So to me, when I started to draw down the picture, it became very clear that we're rewarding the wrong thing. So in terms of our governance and in terms of our fiscal structure right now is rewarding population growth. More you have, more money you get. And therefore the population is increasing and so is vulnerability, because vulnerability doesn't get rewarded. So that's the first kind of root